Let me ask you something. What if the most important decision you make every day happens in the first 60 seconds after you open your eyes? Not what you eat, not how hard you train, not even what time you go to bed. The first 60 seconds. Most people waste them scrolling, checking emails, dreading the day, and they wonder, why do I feel off? Why does focus feel like a fight? Why does my body feel like it's working against me? Here's what nobody tells you. Your body runs on a clock, a biological clock that resets every single morning. And if you don't know how to set it right, it sets itself wrong every single day. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to take back control of that clock using nothing but light, temperature, and timing. Every protocol covered in this channel is reviewed by a clinical pharmacist and researcher. This isn't wellness fluff. This is biology. And once you understand what's actually happening inside your body each morning, you'll never look at your alarm clock the same way again. Think about the last time you traveled across time zones. Maybe it was a business trip to Europe. Maybe it was a vacation you'd been planning for months. And within the first day or two, something felt wrong. Your stomach was off. Your thinking was foggy. You were tired at 2 in the afternoon and wide awake at 3 in the morning. You couldn't focus. You couldn't perform. You felt like a stranger inside your own body. That's not weakness. That's not age. That's biology doing exactly what it's designed to do and being confused. Here's what's happening under the hood. Every single cell in your body, and I mean every cell, not just the ones in your brain, has its own internal clock. Scientists call it a circadian rhythm, from the Latin circadium, meaning around a day. These clocks are regulated by genes. They've been evolving in living organisms for hundreds of millions of years, long before electricity, long before alarm clocks, long before anyone had to be somewhere at 8 a.m. Your cells don't know about your calendar. They know about light. They know about temperature. They know about timing. And they are constantly trying to synchronize with each other and with the external world. Now here's where it gets interesting. When those clocks are aligned, when every system in your body is running on the same schedule, you feel it. You feel sharp. You feel energized at the right times. You fall asleep without fighting yourself. Your metabolism runs efficiently. Your immune system is calibrated. Your hormones are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. But when those clocks are out of sync, it doesn't just feel like jet lag. It feels like low-grade depression, like your engine is running but the transmission is slipping. You're there, technically, but not fully there. And here's the part that most people over 40 don't realize. This misalignment isn't just something that happens when you cross time zones. It happens every single week, sometimes every single day. Because of how most of us structure our mornings, we wake up, we stay indoors, we look at our phones, we drink coffee immediately, we drive to work with sunglasses on, we eat at irregular times. And every one of those choices sends a confusing signal to your 37 trillion cells that are trying desperately to figure out, what time is it? Your body is not broken, it's just confused. And confusion, biological confusion, has a cost. Over time, that cost accumulates in ways that feel invisible until they're not. Difficulty concentrating, disrupted sleep, mood that feels just slightly off, not dramatically broken, just not right. Metabolism that doesn't respond the way it used to. Energy that peaks at the wrong times and crashes when you need it most. Sound familiar? Now, and this is the part I want you to really sit with, none of this is inevitable. None of it is simply getting older. Some of it is, yes, aging. But a significant portion of what people chalk up to age in their 40s, 50s, and 60s is actually circadian disruption. A clock that's been quietly running off schedule for years. The science here is not fringe. This is mainstream neuroscience and chronobiology. The Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2017 went to 3 researchers, Jeffrey Hall, Michael Rosbash, and Michael Young, specifically for their work on the molecular mechanisms controlling circadian rhythms. This is as established as it gets. So what do you do with this information? You start by understanding that your body has a master clock, located in a small region of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which sits inside the hypothalamus, and this master clock needs to be set every morning, like winding a watch, and the most powerful signal that sets it is light. Not the light from your phone, not the light from your ceiling bulb, natural light. Specifically the low-angle light of the early morning sun. We're going to go deep on exactly how that works, the specific cells involved, the hormones triggered, the cascade of effects that follows. But before we do, I want to make sure you understand one thing clearly. The morning routine isn't about discipline. It's not about being a high performer or waking up at 4 a.m. because some influencer told you to. It's about giving your biological clock the one signal it has been waiting for, the signal it evolved to receive, so that everything else in your physiology can fall into place. That signal exists. It's free. It's outside your door, and most people walk right past it every morning without a second thought. Let's change that. Block 3. The first hormone of the day. Let's talk about cortisol for a moment. Because if you're over 40, there's a good chance you've heard cortisol described as the enemy, the stress hormone. The thing that makes you gain belly fat and burn out and age faster. And yes, chronically elevated cortisol is a serious problem. But here's what most people get completely wrong about it. Cortisol, in the right amount, at the right time, is not your enemy. It is your engine. Every single day, once every 24 hours, your body produces a natural surge of cortisol. A pulse. It's sharp, it's significant, and it's designed to do something very specific. Wake up your brain, raise your core body temperature, sharpen your focus, and set your entire physiological rhythm in motion for the rest of the day. Think of it less like a stress response and more like a starting pistol. The gun fires, and your biology begins to run. Now here's the critical part. That cortisol pulse doesn't just happen randomly. It's anchored, entrained in scientific language, to a specific trigger. And that trigger is light arriving at your eyes in the early morning. When photons from natural morning light enter your eyes, they hit a very specific type of cell in your retina. Not the rods and cones you learned about in school. Those are for seeing shapes and colors. These are a completely different class of neurons called melanopsin-containing retinal ganglion cells. Intrinsically photosensitive, if you want the full term. They don't care about images. They don't care about contrast or color or detail. They care about one thing only. Is there light? Is it morning? When those cells detect the low-angle, blue spectrum-rich light of the early sun, they fire a signal directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, your master clock, which then signals the hypothalamus, which then coordinates a cascade of hormonal and neurological events throughout your entire body. The cortisol pulse is released. Your temperature starts to climb. Your alertness sharpens. Your dopamine system begins to activate. And critically, a timer is set. That timer determines when melatonin will be released approximately 16 hours later. Melatonin being the hormone that makes you feel sleepy, that prepares your body for sleep, that initiates the physical repair and consolidation processes that happen during the night. So let me connect those dots very clearly. The light you get, or don't get, in the first hour of your morning determines what time your brain will signal your body to fall asleep tonight. Not the melatonin supplement you take, not the sleep meditation you listen to. The light, this morning. Within the first 60 minutes of waking up. If you get that light early, your cortisol pulse fires early, your temperature rhythm advances appropriately, and 16 hours later, you feel naturally sleepy at a reasonable hour. Sleep comes without a fight. You wake up feeling rested. The cycle reinforces itself. If you miss that light, if you stay indoors all morning, or wear sunglasses on your commute, or work in a dim office until noon, something else happens. Your cortisol pulse shifts. It fires later. Your temperature rhythm delays. And then at 11 p.m., when you're lying in bed trying to wind down, your body is physiologically not ready. Because according to your internal clock, it's still the middle of the afternoon. This is not insomnia. This is misalignment. And it's extraordinarily common. Now let me address the objection I know some of you are already forming. But I live somewhere where it's dark and cold in the morning, or it's overcast, or I wake up before the sun rises. Fair. This is a real challenge. Especially for people in northern latitudes, think Germany, Switzerland, Scandinavia, where winter mornings can be genuinely dark for months. Here's the thing though, even on a heavily overcast day, the amount of light energy coming through those clouds is significantly greater than what you get from indoor artificial lighting. Photons are still reaching you. The signal is still being sent. It's weaker. Yes, which means you may need more time outside, closer to 15 or 20 minutes instead of 5. But it still works. And if you wake before sunrise, the protocol adapts. Turn on as many bright overhead lights as you can indoors, not to substitute for sunlight, but to begin the process. And then get outside the moment the sun clears the horizon. The key word here is consistency. Your biology doesn't need perfection. It needs rhythm, a signal, repeated regularly, morning after morning, that tells every cell in your body. This is when the day begins. There is something quietly powerful about stepping outside in the early morning, before the noise starts, before the emails, before the obligations. Just you, the light, and a body that's waking up the way it was designed to wake up. It sounds almost too simple. That's because the most fundamental things in biology usually are. Let's talk about dopamine. And I want to start by asking you to forget almost everything you think you know about it. Because if your understanding of dopamine comes from popular culture, from wellness podcasts, from self-help books, from social media, there's a very good chance you've been sold a simplified version of the story. Dopamine as the feel-good molecule. Dopamine hits, dopamine detox, the reward chemical, the pleasure center. It's not wrong exactly, it's just incomplete. And the part that's missing is the part that actually matters most for how you function every single day. Here is what dopamine actually does, at its core. Dopamine is not primarily the molecule of pleasure. It is the molecule of pursuit, of drive, of wanting, of the internal force that makes you get up when you don't feel like it, push through when things are hard, stay focused when everything around you is pulling your attention in 17 different directions. Dopamine is life force, directed energy, the neurochemical engine behind motivation itself. And here's what makes this directly relevant to your morning. When morning light hits those melanopsin ganglion cells in your retina and fires that signal to the hypothalamus, yes, it sets your cortisol pulse. Yes, it anchors your circadian rhythm, but it also does something else, something that most people never hear about. It triggers a release of dopamine, right there, in the morning, before you've done anything, before you've earned it, achieved anything, consumed anything. Simply by exposing yourself to natural morning light, you are initiating a dopamine cascade that will color the neurochemical tone of your entire day. Think about what that means practically. That sense of motivation you feel some mornings, that rare, almost electric readiness where tasks feel manageable and your thinking feels clear and you actually want to engage with the day, that's not random. That's not personality. That's not some people just being morning people. That is a neurochemical state, and it can be cultivated consistently through behavior, or it can be quietly suppressed, also through behavior. When you stay indoors in low light, scrolling through your phone, especially in the morning, you are doing two things simultaneously that work against your dopamine system. First, you're depriving yourself of the photon signal that would have triggered that natural dopamine release. Second, you're exposing yourself to a flood of artificially engineered dopamine microspikes from social media, notifications, and variable reward content. Little hits, rapid and shallow, that over time blunt your brain's sensitivity to dopamine and make the quieter, deeper rewards of focused work, physical effort, and genuine connection feel less satisfying by comparison. You don't feel broken, but you feel flat, slightly numb. Like everything requires more effort than it should. This, for many people over 40, is the invisible tax of modern indoor living. Now let me take this a step further, because the dopamine light connection goes even deeper than the eyes. There is a remarkable study, conducted in Israel, that looked at what happens when people expose not just their eyes but their skin to sunlight. Participants were instructed to go outside for 20 to 30 minutes, 3 times a week, without sunglasses, without hats, wearing short sleeves and shorts where appropriate. Just skin and sunlight. What they measured afterward was striking. Testosterone levels increased significantly in men. Estrogen levels increased in women. And the mechanism involves a pathway that most people have never heard of. When ultraviolet light, specifically UVB, penetrates the superficial layers of the skin, it activates cells called keratinocytes. These keratinocytes trigger a molecular pathway involving a protein called p53, which ultimately stimulates dopamine release in the brain and body. The skin, it turns out, is not just a barrier, it's an endocrine organ, a hormone-producing surface that responds directly to light. Your skin is listening to the sun, and when it hears it, when it receives that UVB signal, it participates in a system-wide response that raises dopamine, raises testosterone, raises epinephrine, and collectively creates what researchers have described as a biological state resembling, at a neurochemical level, the heightened vitality people associate with summer. This is why people feel better in summer, not just psychologically, biochemically, measurably. And this is why, if you live in a place with dark winters, Germany, Switzerland, the northern United States, and you're not making a deliberate, disciplined effort to get outside even when it's cold, even when the sky is gray, even when everything in you says stay inside, you are silently paying a biological price. Week after week, month after month. You don't have to move to California. You don't need a light therapy box, though those can help in extreme cases. What you need is a decision, a commitment to treat morning light exposure not as a wellness luxury, but as a physiological necessity, as non-negotiable as eating, as non-negotiable as water. Because here is the quiet truth that I want to leave with you in this block. Your drive, your motivation, your capacity to feel genuinely good, not artificially stimulated, not numbed, but actually good, depends in large part on a system that is asking every single morning for one thing: light, real light, early light. The kind that has been falling on human faces since the beginning of our species. You are not a machine that runs on coffee and willpower. You are a biological organism with ancient, elegant, deeply calibrated systems. Systems that are trying every day to do their job. They just need the right inputs. Give them the light. The rest begins to follow. Let me guess something about your morning. You wake up. Within minutes, maybe even before you've fully opened your eyes, you're thinking about coffee. Maybe you've already set the timer the night before so it's ready when you get up. Maybe the first thing you do, before anything else, is walk to the kitchen and pour a cup. And it works. You feel it kick in. The fog lifts. You feel sharper, more capable, ready. And then, somewhere between 1 and 3 in the afternoon, you hit a wall. Not a gentle slowdown. A wall. The kind where your eyes feel heavy, your thinking becomes sluggish, and the idea of doing anything that requires sustained mental effort feels almost physically painful. You reach for another coffee, maybe something sweet. You push through. But the quality of those afternoon hours, let's be honest, is a fraction of what your morning was. You probably assumed that was just how afternoons work. A natural dip. Aging. Life. It's not. Or at least, it doesn't have to be. What's actually happening involves a molecule called adenosine. And understanding adenosine, really understanding it, will change how you think about caffeine, sleep, and energy for the rest of your life. Here's the mechanism. From the moment you wake up, your brain begins producing adenosine. Continuously. The longer you're awake, the more adenosine accumulates in your system. Adenosine binds to specific receptors in the brain and progressively activates what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest side of your autonomic nervous system. As adenosine builds, alertness decreases. You feel heavier, slower, more inclined to rest. This is not a malfunction. This is your brain's elegant way of tracking how long you've been awake and signaling that sleep is becoming necessary. Scientists call this process sleep pressure, or adenosine pressure. And it's one of the two main drives that govern when you sleep and how deeply, the other being your circadian rhythm, which we've already discussed. Now, what does sleep do among its many functions? It clears adenosine. During sleep, adenosine is metabolically broken down and removed. This is why you wake up feeling refreshed after a good night of sleep. The pressure has been released, the slate has been partially cleared, partially, not completely, because here's the part that matters. In the first 60 to 90 minutes after you wake up, your body is still in the process of clearing residual adenosine from the night. You're not fully alert yet, not because something is wrong with you, but because that clearance takes time. Those early morning grogginess feelings. That's adenosine still present in your system, being metabolized out. Now, what does caffeine do? Caffeine does not give you energy. This is a fundamental misunderstanding that I want to be very clear about. Caffeine does not create alertness. It borrows it. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors. It fits into those receptors like a key in a lock, preventing adenosine from binding. So the adenosine is still there, still accumulating, still building up pressure, but it can't deliver its message. You feel alert because the signal of fatigue has been temporarily intercepted, and then the caffeine wears off. When it does, those receptors open back up, and adenosine, which has been accumulating the entire time caffeine was blocking it, floods in, all at once, with, in some cases, even greater affinity for the receptors than normal. That is your afternoon crash. That is the wall. Not a mystery, not aging, not weakness. A direct, predictable biochemical consequence of blocking adenosine receptors before your body had a chance to clear the overnight residue naturally. So here is the protocol change that I want you to consider. And I want to be honest, this one is uncomfortable at first. Delay your first caffeine intake by 60 to 90 minutes after waking. That's it. Just wait. Use that window to hydrate. Your body is mildly dehydrated after 7 or 8 hours of not drinking water, and dehydration alone impairs cognitive function measurably. Get outside for your morning light exposure. Move your body if that's part of your routine. Let the natural adenosine clearance happen on its own, the way it was designed to. Then have your coffee, or your tea, or whatever your preferred caffeine source is. Have it with full enjoyment. No guilt, just better timing. What happens when you do this consistently? The afternoon crash diminishes. In many people, it disappears almost entirely. Because you're not front-loading the caffeine at a time when adenosine is still clearing naturally. You're introducing it after that clearing window, when it can genuinely extend and enhance alertness rather than simply suppress a signal that was already in the process of resolving on its own. Now I want to address something else while we're here because it connects directly to this. Exercise, specifically morning exercise, and what it does to adenosine. Physical movement, even moderate physical activity, accelerates adenosine clearance. When you exercise in the morning, you're not just burning calories or building fitness. You're actively helping your brain clear the neurochemical pressure of sleep and transition into genuine, biochemically supported wakefulness. This is why people who exercise in the morning consistently report feeling more alert and focused throughout the day, not just in the hours immediately following the workout, but for extended periods afterward. The combination of morning light, movement, hydration, and delayed caffeine creates a morning environment inside your brain and body that is, quite literally, optimized for human performance. Not hyped up, not artificially stimulated, genuinely, sustainably, biologically primed. And here's the part I want you to feel, not just understand intellectually. You know that state, that rare state, where the morning feels almost effortless? Where you sit down to work and the thinking comes clearly, where your energy feels stable rather than spiky, where you're present rather than already half exhausted? That state is not luck. It's not reserved for people with perfect genetics or perfect lives or a 4 a.m. discipline you could never maintain. It's a biological state, achievable, repeatable, built one morning at a time through inputs your body already knows how to use. The caffeine timing thing alone, just that one shift, has genuinely changed the quality of life for people who try it consistently. Not dramatically, not overnight, but steadily, quietly, measurably. And sometimes the most powerful changes are the quiet ones. Block 6. The cold truth about temperature and your brain. I want to talk about something that will probably make part of you uncomfortable just thinking about it. Cold water, not metaphorically, literally. Cold water on your body in the morning, deliberately chosen. I know, stay with me. Because what happens inside your brain and body when you expose yourself to cold, the precise sequence of neurochemical events that unfolds in the minutes and hours afterward, is one of the most compelling arguments I've encountered for any single behavioral intervention, and I say that not as someone trying to sell you a wellness trend. I say it as someone who's looked carefully at the peer-reviewed research and found it genuinely difficult to dismiss. But before we get to cold, we need to talk about temperature itself. Because temperature is not just a comfort variable. It is a core biological signal, one of the primary levers your body uses to regulate sleep, wakefulness, metabolism, and hormonal output. Here's the architecture. Your core body temperature follows a precise daily rhythm. It reaches its lowest point, called the temperature minimum, roughly 2 hours before you naturally wake up. For most people, that's somewhere between 4 and 6 in the morning. At that temperature minimum, something shifts. Your body begins generating heat. Core temperature starts to rise. And it is that rise in temperature, not the alarm clock, not the light yet, but the thermal signal itself that initiates waking. This is why some people wake up just before their alarm. The cortisol pulse and the temperature rise are already in motion. The alarm simply confirms what the biology already knew. From there, temperature continues to climb throughout the morning and into the early afternoon, reaching a daily maximum somewhere around 2 to 3 p.m. This temperature peak corresponds with your period of peak physiological performance, reaction time, muscular strength, cardiovascular efficiency, and in many people, cognitive sharpness. Your body is running at full capacity. Then it begins to drop. And as temperature falls through the evening, gradually, steadily, sleepiness increases. The drop in core temperature is not a consequence of sleep. It is a signal for sleep. Your body is cooling itself down in preparation for the physiological repair work that happens during the night. Understanding this rhythm gives you an entirely different lens through which to view the choices you make throughout the day. Want to fall asleep more easily at night? Keep your bedroom cool. Not freezing, but meaningfully cool. Around 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. The cool environment accelerates the drop in core temperature that your body is already trying to achieve, making the transition into sleep faster and the sleep itself deeper. Want to be more alert in the morning? Raise your core temperature early, deliberately, through movement, through light, and here's where we return to the cold, through deliberate cold exposure. Now I know this sounds paradoxical. How does cold water raise your core temperature? If you think about it mechanically, you'd expect the opposite. Here's what actually happens. Your brain contains a small but extraordinarily important region called the medial preoptic area, which functions as your body's internal thermostat. When the surface of your body, your skin, is exposed to cold, this thermostat detects the drop in peripheral temperature and responds by increasing core body heat production. It's a compensatory mechanism. Your body essentially says, the outside is cold, so we are going to generate more internal heat to protect the core. Cold surface, warm core. So a cold shower or cold immersion in the morning doesn't make you cold, at least not at the core level that matters for wakefulness and performance. It triggers a thermogenic response that raises core temperature. Combined with morning light and movement, you have now activated 3 of the most powerful temperature-raising signals your biology knows. But there's more, because the temperature effect is only part of what cold exposure does. In 2000, a paper published in the European Journal of Applied Physiology examined what happens to human subjects during and after cold water immersion, specifically looking at the neurochemical response. What they found was remarkable in its magnitude. Cold water exposure triggers a rapid and significant release of 2 key molecules, epinephrine, also called adrenaline, and dopamine. The epinephrine response is immediate. Within seconds of entering cold water, your adrenal glands in a region of your brainstem called the locus coeruleus, a small cluster of neurons that essentially acts as the brain's master alertness switch, release a surge of epinephrine that floods the brain and body simultaneously. This is the shock you feel, the gasp, the sudden, almost violent sharpening of awareness. And here is something important to understand about that moment. In the first 20 to 30 seconds of cold exposure, for most people, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational decision-making, long-term planning, and emotional regulation, becomes significantly less active. Other, more primitive brain regions take over. You're not thinking, you're reacting, surviving. This is why cold exposure feels so mentally demanding. It's not just physical discomfort. It's a genuine neurological challenge. Your higher brain functions are being temporarily overridden by survival circuitry. And this is also why, with consistent practice, cold exposure builds something that goes beyond physical tolerance. It builds the capacity to remain calm under neurological stress, to breathe deliberately when every instinct says panic, to choose your response when your brain is telling you there's no choice. That skill, that practiced pause between stimulus and response, transfers into difficult conversations, into high-pressure professional situations, into the moments in life when composure is the most valuable thing you can bring. But let's return to the dopamine, because this is where the long-term value of cold exposure becomes truly compelling. Unlike the immediate epinephrine spike, which rises sharply and falls relatively quickly, the dopamine response to cold exposure follows a different pattern. It rises more slowly, peaks higher, and, critically, sustains. Research in humans has shown that cold water immersion can produce dopamine elevations of 200 to 300% above baseline, lasting for 2 to 3 hours following exposure. Not a spike, an arc. A long, sustained elevation in the very molecule that drives motivation, focus, and the capacity for effortful engagement with life. Think about what that means for your morning. You've already gotten your light exposure, you've activated your cortisol pulse, you've cleared adenosine through movement and delayed your caffeine, and now you've triggered a dopamine arc that will carry you, neurochemically supported, through the most cognitively demanding hours of your day. You haven't taken anything. You haven't hacked anything in the artificial sense. You've simply given your biology the inputs it evolved to use, in the sequence it evolved to receive them. There is a researcher at Stanford, a specialist in addiction medicine, who documented a patient recovering from severe cocaine dependency. This patient found that cold water immersion was the only non-pharmacological intervention that produced a dopamine response significant enough to ease the withdrawal and help him disengage from the drug. Not equivalent to cocaine, nothing behavioral is, but meaningful, real, enough to make a difference in a life that was falling apart. That story is not an argument for cold showers as addiction therapy. It's an illustration of how significant and real the neurochemical response is. This is not placebo. This is not motivation speaker territory. This is measurable biochemistry, documented in peer-reviewed human studies. The mood lift you feel after cold exposure, that clarity, that strange calm meets energy state, is not psychological. It's dopamine and epinephrine doing exactly what they're designed to do, activated by a stimulus your body has known how to respond to for tens of thousands of years. Cold is information, and your body knows exactly what to do with it. Block 7. The protocol comes together. Before I continue, and I promise this connects to everything we've been building toward, I need to say something directly to you. We are getting close to a milestone for this channel, a number that matters to us. And if you've made it this far into this video, you're exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. Someone who doesn't want shortcuts, someone who wants to understand why, someone who takes their health seriously enough to actually sit with the science. So if you're not subscribed yet, right now before we go further, hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications, because every single week, we bring you content at this level of depth. And every protocol on this channel is reviewed by a clinical pharmacist and researcher, not influencer advice, not trend chasing, verified, sourced, applied science, for people who are serious about living well past 40, 50, 60, and beyond. That's who we're here for. That's who you are. Now, let's talk about what happens when you actually put all of this together. Because individually, each element we've discussed, light, cortisol, dopamine, adenosine, temperature, cold exposure, is meaningful. But when they interact, when they stack on top of each other in the right sequence, something shifts in a way that's genuinely difficult to describe until you've experienced it yourself. Your biology doesn't respond to isolated inputs. It responds to patterns, to rhythms, to the accumulated signal of consistent, repeated behavior over time. Think of it this way. Imagine your body's internal state as a body of water, a lake. On most mornings, for most people living modern indoor lives, that lake is still, flat, slightly murky, not frozen, just inert, waiting. And then the day arrives and pulls them along, reactive rather than primed, responding to demands rather than meeting them from a position of genuine readiness. Now imagine a different morning. You wake up, naturally, or close to it. Because your temperature has begun to rise on schedule, your cortisol pulse is firing at the right time, your circadian clock is set. You don't reach for your phone. You drink a glass of water first because your body is mildly dehydrated from the night and your brain, which is roughly 75% water, needs hydration to function at baseline, let alone optimally. You step outside. The morning light, even if it's cool, even if the sky is partly clouded, hits your eyes. Your melanopsin cells fire. The signal reaches your hypothalamus within milliseconds. Dopamine begins to release. Your cortisol pulse is confirmed, anchored to this time, this light, this morning. Your master clock says noted. Same time tomorrow. You move. It doesn't need to be a brutal workout. A brisk walk, some body weight movement. Enough to raise your heart rate, generate body heat, accelerate adenosine clearance, and signal to every system in your body that this organism is active, awake, and engaged with the world. Then, if cold exposure is part of your practice, you enter the cold. 20 seconds, 40 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. Whatever your current capacity is, you breathe through the initial shock. You feel the epinephrine surge. You stay, you exit, and then you feel it. That long, slow arc of dopamine beginning to build. Now, 60 to 90 minutes after waking, you have your coffee or your tea. The adenosine has been partially cleared by sleep, by movement, by time. The caffeine now meets a system that is already genuinely awake, genuinely alert, and it extends and enhances that state rather than manufacturing it artificially over a bed of unresolved adenosine pressure. You sit down to work or to whatever your morning demands, and something is different, not dramatically. The world hasn't changed. Your inbox is still full. Your responsibilities haven't disappeared. But your internal state, your neurochemical baseline, your temperature rhythm, your hormonal milieu is calibrated, aligned, pointing in the same direction. The lake is not still. It's moving, quietly, powerfully, in a direction. Now here's what I want to be very clear about, because I think this is where wellness content often loses people. This is not an all-or-nothing protocol. It is not a perfect morning or failed morning situation. The biology here is not that fragile, and you are not that fragile. Some mornings you'll get all of it. Light, movement, cold, hydration, timed caffeine. Those mornings will feel like what they are, a fully optimized biological start. Other mornings you'll get 2 elements, or 1, or you'll sleep through your alarm and rush straight into the day. That's not failure. That's life. And one morning, or even 1 week, of imperfect implementation doesn't undo the rhythm you're building. Circadian biology responds to averages, to patterns over time, not to individual days. What matters is direction, trending over weeks and months, toward mornings that give your biology what it needs, not because some video told you to, but because you understand, genuinely understand, why it works. And understanding why is the most durable form of motivation there is. Because motivation built on willpower alone is fragile. It depends on feeling inspired, on having energy, on everything going right. But motivation built on understanding, on a clear, internalized model of cause and effect, survives bad days, survives weeks where nothing goes as planned, survives the slow, grinding seasons of life that come for all of us eventually. You don't need to believe in the protocol. You just need to understand the biology, and then you need to make one small choice, repeated with enough consistency that it becomes unremarkable, as automatic as brushing your teeth, as unconsidered as putting on shoes before you walk out the door. The morning routine that optimizes your brain and body is not a performance. It's not a ritual you photograph and post. It's not a signal to others that you're serious about health. It's a private conversation between you and your own biology, conducted before most of the world is even awake. And that conversation, quiet, consistent, grounded in real science, compounds. Month over month, year over year. Until one day someone asks you why you seem so steady, why your energy holds when others are flagging, why you age the way you do. And the honest answer is almost embarrassingly simple. You learned what your body needed, and then you gave it that. Most days. I want to shift the tone slightly here. Not to frighten you, not to catastrophize, but because I think you deserve the full picture. And the full picture includes what the science says happens. Not in one bad morning, not in one difficult week, but over years and decades of chronic circadian misalignment. Because this is where it stops being about performance optimization and starts being about something more fundamental. It starts being about how long you live, and how well. Let me give you some context first. The field of chronobiology, the scientific study of biological rhythms, has expanded dramatically in the last 2 decades. Partly because of the tools available to researchers now. Partly because of the Nobel Prize recognition in 2017 that brought mainstream attention to the field. And partly because the data that has been accumulating is simply too significant to ignore. What that data shows is this: chronic disruption of circadian rhythms. The kind that happens not from one transatlantic flight, but from years of irregular sleep schedules, insufficient morning light, excessive artificial light at night, shift work, and the general temporal chaos of modern life, is associated with a cluster of health outcomes that reads like a catalog of the diseases most feared by adults over 40. Metabolic dysfunction, obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, immune dysregulation, accelerated cognitive decline. And in the epidemiological literature, studies involving hundreds of thousands of people tracked over decades, elevated rates of certain cancers. I want to be precise here because precision matters. Association is not causation. Epidemiology identifies patterns, not mechanisms, and the relationship between circadian disruption and disease is complex and multidirectional. But the consistency of these associations across independent research groups, across different countries and populations, across different methodologies, that consistency is not something serious scientists dismiss lightly. And the mechanisms, the biological pathways through which circadian disruption could plausibly cause these outcomes, are increasingly well understood. Take metabolism as an example. Your body does not process food the same way at every hour of the day. This is not intuitive. Most people assume a calorie is a calorie regardless of timing. But your metabolic machinery is rhythmically organized. Insulin sensitivity is higher in the morning. Digestive enzyme production, gut motility, liver function, the hormones that regulate hunger and satiety, all of them follow circadian patterns. When those patterns are disrupted, when you're eating at times that don't align with your metabolic clock, or when your clock itself is shifted by chronic light misalignment, the efficiency of your metabolism degrades. You don't process glucose as effectively. Fat storage increases. Hunger signals become dysregulated. You feel hungrier at night. You crave carbohydrates at times when your body is least equipped to handle them efficiently. And over years, that chronic metabolic stress contributes to the very conditions: insulin resistance, visceral adiposity, cardiovascular risk, that define the health trajectory most people over 40 are desperately trying to avoid. Now take cognitive function. Sleep, real, deep, well-timed sleep, is when your brain performs a kind of biological maintenance that has no waking equivalent. The glymphatic system, a network of channels that runs alongside blood vessels in the brain, becomes dramatically more active during sleep. It essentially flushes the brain, clearing metabolic waste products, including a protein called amyloid beta. You may recognize that name. Amyloid beta accumulation in the brain is one of the primary pathological hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. I am not saying that poor sleep causes Alzheimer's. The relationship is far more complex than that. But researchers like Matthew Walker at UC Berkeley have documented, with genuine rigor, that even a single night of disrupted sleep produces measurable increases in amyloid beta accumulation in the human brain. And that chronic sleep disruption, the kind that follows from chronic circadian misalignment, is associated in the longitudinal literature with accelerated cognitive decline. Your brain cleans itself during sleep, and it can only do that job properly when sleep is timed correctly. When it aligns with the biological window your circadian clock has designated for deep restoration. This is not a small thing. This is the difference, accumulated over decades between a mind that remains sharp and a mind that slowly, quietly loses ground. Now, I want to address something that I think sits beneath all of this. Something that the data points toward, but that rarely gets said directly. For many people, particularly people in their 40s and 50s who are high-functioning, who are managing careers and families and significant responsibilities, the erosion of circadian health is completely invisible until it isn't. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with a diagnosis or a dramatic event. It arrives as a slow accumulation of things that feel slightly off. Sleep that's technically adequate but not restorative. Energy that's manageable but not what it used to be. Mood that's stable but has lost some of its range. Less high, less low, just flatter. Cognitive performance that still functions but requires noticeably more effort than it once did. This is the quiet cost, not the dramatic cost. The quiet, daily, compounding cost of a biological clock that has been running slightly off for years. And what makes it particularly insidious is that it feels like aging. It feels like this is simply what getting older means. That the vitality of your 30s was always going to give way to this slightly diminished version of yourself that requires more caffeine, more effort, more management to function at a level that once felt natural. But here's what the science is increasingly clear about. A significant portion of what we attribute to aging, particularly in the 40s and 50s, is not inevitable biological decline. It is the accumulated consequence of years of circadian disruption, of mornings without light, of nights with too much artificial illumination, of sleep that never quite aligned with the biological rhythms it was supposed to serve. The decline is real, but it is not entirely fixed. Circadian rhythms are remarkably, sometimes almost frustratingly, responsive to behavioral change. The system wants to entrain, it wants to align. It's been trying to do exactly that your entire life. When you give it consistent light at the right time, consistent darkness at the right time, consistent temperature cues, consistent timing of eating and movement, it responds. Not overnight. Not dramatically in the first week, but steadily, measurably over weeks and months. People who implement these changes consistently describe it not as feeling like they've found a new version of themselves, but as feeling like they've recovered an older one. The version that existed before the years of indoor living and irregular schedules and artificial light and the slow, invisible accumulation of biological confusion. That version is not gone. It's just been waiting for the right inputs. And the inputs are not complicated. They are not expensive. They are not reserved for people with perfect genetics or unlimited time or extraordinary discipline. They are the same inputs your great-grandparents received without thinking about them, because they lived in a world that provided them automatically. Light in the morning, darkness at night, movement during the day, rest when the body asked for it. The modern world has made those inputs optional, and we are paying the price of having treated them that way. We've covered a lot of ground together, and I want to honor that by doing something simple in this block. No more mechanisms, no more deep dives into molecular pathways, just the protocol. Clear, honest, practical. Laid out in a way that respects your intelligence and your time. Because information without application is just entertainment. And this material is too important to remain theoretical. So here it is. The complete morning protocol, built from everything we've discussed. Structured in a way that you can begin tomorrow, not next Monday. Not after you've bought something or set up something or prepared in some elaborate way. Tomorrow morning, let's walk through it. The moment you wake up. Don't reach for your phone. I know this is the hardest part for most people, not because they're weak, but because the phone has been engineered by some of the smartest behavioral scientists in the world to be the first thing you want. Resist that. Not forever. just for the first 60 to 90 minutes. Instead, drink water. A full glass, ideally 500 ml or more, before anything else. Your brain has been running a fast for 7 or 8 hours. It is mildly dehydrated. Cognitive performance drops measurably with even 1 to 2% dehydration. Water first. Before coffee, before conversation, before screens. Within the first 30 minutes, light. Get outside. This is the non-negotiable cornerstone of everything we've discussed. No sunglasses, no hat pulled low over your eyes. Just your face, turned toward the sky, receiving the morning light directly. 5 minutes on a clear day, 10 to 15 on an overcast one, 30 minutes if you're in winter at a northern latitude and the light is genuinely weak. You don't need to stare at the sun, never do that. You simply need to be outside, eyes open, facing the general direction of natural light. Walk while you do it if you prefer. Stand with your coffee once the 90-minute window has passed. Move through your neighborhood. It doesn't need to be ceremonial. It just needs to happen. If you wake before sunrise, turn on bright overhead lights indoors immediately. Not a lamp. Overhead lights as many as you have. Then get outside the moment the sun appears. If you are in a place where winter makes this genuinely difficult, northern Germany, Switzerland, Scandinavia, Canada, consider an LED light therapy panel. Not as a replacement for outdoor light, but as a supplement on the darkest mornings. Position it at eye level, about 30 centimeters from your face, for 10 minutes while you do something else. Eat breakfast. Read. It is not as powerful as real sunlight, but it is meaningfully better than nothing. Movement. Flexible, but early. This doesn't need to be a full workout, though if that's your practice, morning is an excellent time for it. What matters is that you move. A 20-minute walk covers most of what the biology requires. Adenosine clearance, temperature elevation, cardiovascular activation, and a secondary dopamine signal that compounds with your light exposure. If you train more intensely in the morning, understand that post-exercise your body temperature will be elevated, your dopamine and epinephrine will be high, and your adenosine pressure will be significantly reduced. You will feel genuinely alert. That is not caffeine dependence. That is your biology performing as designed. Cold exposure, optional but powerful. If you choose to incorporate cold, the timing is flexible within the morning window. A cold shower works. Cold immersion works better if you have access to it. The target is water that feels genuinely cold to you. Not lukewarm, not merely cool. Cold. Start with 30 seconds if that's all you can manage. Build to 2 or 3 minutes over weeks. Breathe deliberately through the initial shock. Slow exhale through pursed lips if that helps. Don't fight the discomfort. Observe it. Stay with it. Exit feeling the epinephrine already in your system, and know that the dopamine arc is just beginning. Do not do cold exposure immediately before sleep. Cold raises core body temperature through the compensatory thermogenic response, and elevated core temperature is incompatible with falling asleep. Morning or early afternoon only. Caffeine. Delayed, not eliminated. 60 to 90 minutes after waking. That's the window. If you currently drink coffee within minutes of opening your eyes, start by pushing it back 15 minutes per day. Gradual change is more sustainable than dramatic overnight shifts, and your caffeine habit is deeply behavioral as well as physiological. It needs to be adjusted slowly. Once you've reached the 60 to 90 minute mark consistently, notice the afternoons. Give it 2 weeks before you evaluate. Most people report a significant reduction in afternoon energy crashes. Some report the crashes disappearing almost entirely. This is the adenosine clearance doing its work. Caffeine meeting a system that is genuinely awake rather than one that is still clearing the overnight residue. Avoid caffeine after 2 p.m. if sleep quality is a concern. Caffeine has a half-life of approximately 5 to 6 hours in most people, meaning half of a 3 p.m. coffee is still active in your system at 8 or 9 p.m., working against the very adenosine buildup your body needs to feel sleepy at a reasonable hour. The sequence, summarized: wake, water, light, outside, within 30 minutes. Movement, any form, sufficient to generate body heat and raise heart rate. Cold, if you choose it. Caffeine, 60 to 90 minutes post-waking. Then, and only then, the day begins in earnest. That's the whole thing. No supplements required, no expensive equipment necessary. No alarm set for 4 a.m. unless that genuinely suits your chronotype. No performance, no theater, just biology, respected. Now I want to say something honest about implementation because I think it matters. You will not do this perfectly. Nobody does. There will be mornings when the alarm fails and you're rushing before you've had a chance to do anything deliberate. Mornings when it's raining sideways and getting outside for even 5 minutes feels genuinely unreasonable. Mornings when life, children, travel, illness, the simple chaos of being human, overrides the best intentions entirely. Those mornings are not failures, they are data points in a much longer arc. The question to ask yourself is not, did I do the protocol perfectly today? The question is my trend over the last month moving in the right direction? Because circadian biology responds to averages, it responds to the pattern your body recognizes as your rhythm. And a rhythm built imperfectly but consistently, with genuine effort most days, realistic flexibility on the harder ones, is infinitely more powerful than a perfect protocol that collapses under the first difficult week. Start with one element, just one, the light exposure, if nothing else. Do it every morning for 2 weeks and notice, genuinely notice with honest attention, whether anything shifts in your energy, in your mood, in the quality of your sleep, in the afternoons. Then add the next element, water, then movement, then the caffeine timing. Build the protocol the way you build any durable habit, not with dramatic overnight transformation, but with patient, consistent, unremarkable repetition, until the behavior becomes automatic and the alternative starts to feel strange. That's not a motivational statement. That's how behavioral neuroscience says habit formation actually works. You already know what to do. You've known it since the first block of this video. The only remaining question is what you'll choose to do with it. And I think, if you've come this far, the answer to that question is already becoming clear. There's a moment that happens sometimes, not often but sometimes, where you wake up and everything is simply right. You don't know why immediately. The room is the right temperature. Your body feels rested in a way that goes beyond just not being tired. Your mind is quiet but present, alert without being agitated. There's no weight to the morning, no resistance, just a clean, open sense of being ready. You've had that morning. Maybe not recently, maybe not in a while, but you remember it. The feeling of it. That particular quality of wakefulness that makes everything that follows feel more possible. Most people assume that morning was luck, a random alignment of circumstances, good genes on a good day, something you couldn't manufacture deliberately even if you wanted to. But now you know something different. That morning wasn't random. That morning was biology working the way it was always designed to work. Every cell in your body synchronized, your cortisol pulse firing at the right time, your dopamine system primed by light and movement, your temperature rising on schedule, your adenosine cleared, your nervous system calm and ready rather than reactive and depleted. That morning was what your body is capable of, not as an exception, but as a baseline. Not on the best days of your life. On ordinary Tuesdays. On gray November mornings in cities far from the equator. On the mornings after imperfect sleep and demanding weeks and the weight of all the things life quietly accumulates. That morning is available to you. Not always, not perfectly, but with a consistency that would surprise you if you gave the biology what it needs. And here's what strikes me, sitting with everything we've covered in this video. We live in a time of extraordinary complexity. The problems we face as individuals, as families, as societies, are genuinely difficult. The demands on our attention, our energy, our capacity for clear thinking and sustained effort are higher than they have ever been in human history. And the solutions being sold to us, the supplements, the devices, the optimized protocols, the biohacking tools, grow more sophisticated and more expensive every year. But the most fundamental inputs your body requires to function at its best are the same ones it has required for 200,000 years. Light, darkness, movement, rest, temperature, Time, not purchased, not optimized by an algorithm, not delivered by a subscription service. Just the world, received with a little more intentionality than most of us have been bringing to it. There's something quietly humbling about that, and something quietly empowering too. Because it means the gap between how you feel most mornings and how you're capable of feeling isn't primarily a gap in resources. It's a gap in information, in understanding, in the simple, undramatic decision to align your daily behavior with the biology you've been carrying your entire life. That gap, you can close it, starting tomorrow, with a glass of water and 5 minutes outside. Not because it's easy, not because it always feels good in the moment, but because you understand now what's happening in your body when you do those things. And understanding changes the relationship between you and the behavior. It makes the choice feel less like discipline and more like logic, less like sacrifice and more like basic respect for a body that has been doing its best to serve you under conditions it was never quite designed for. Your body is not your enemy. It's not failing you. It's not betraying you with age and fatigue and all the ways it sometimes doesn't cooperate. It's just waiting, patiently, persistently, with remarkable faithfulness, for the inputs that tell it what time it is. Give it the light, give it the movement, give it the temperature and the timing and the stillness it needs at night, and watch what it does with that. Not immediately, not dramatically, but steadily. The way all real things grow. There is a version of you, not younger, not fundamentally different, not requiring a different life or a different body, that wakes up most mornings and feels genuinely ready for what the day asks. That version doesn't need the morning to be perfect, doesn't need the circumstances to cooperate, doesn't need to fight themselves into alertness through caffeine and willpower and sheer stubbornness. That version just needs the clock to be set right. You know how to set it now. The rest is up to you. If this video reached something real in you, if something here shifted, even slightly, in how you understand what your body needs, I want to ask you something. Don't keep it to yourself. Think of 5 people in your life who need to hear this. Not because they're broken, but because they're exactly like most of us, living in a world that has quietly disconnected them from the biological rhythms that make everything else work better. Share this with them, directly, without overthinking it. And subscribe to this channel, if you haven't already, because this is what we do here, every week. Science that matters, applied to real life. For people who are serious about how they age, how they perform, and how they feel. Not just today, but in 10 years, and 20. Every protocol on this channel is reviewed by a clinical pharmacist and researcher. This is not wellness content. This is your health taken seriously. Leave a comment below, a real one. Tell me what landed for you. Tell me what you're going to try first, and tell me what you want us to go deep on next. The next video comes from you. I'll be here, same time tomorrow.